Hello and welcome to a Talmud Israeli production. Today we will review the highlights of this week's course of Daf Yomi study, Masechet Sukkah pages 53 to 56 and Masechet Beitzah pages 2 through 4. Sukkah Nun Gimel. Here the Talmud is talking about those people who participated in the rejoicing in Simchat Perashoevad, the celebration of the water libation. Tanu Rabbanan, Yesh Mehen Omrim, Ashrei Aldutenu Shlo Bishat Ziknutenu. There were those among the participants who said, fortunate are we that our childhoods, that our adolescence did not embarrass us in our old age, meaning we had always behaved well, even in our earliest years. Ilu Chasidim v'Anshe Maaseh, these are the pietists and the men of good deeds. V'yesh ben omrim, Ashrei ziknotenu shikpral yaldutenu, and others said, fortunate are we that our older years will serve as an atonement for our earlier years, meaning they were a bit misbehaved and sinful in their early years of life, but they turned it around spiritually and became tzaddikim in their elder years, and so all is well that ends well. Elu ve'elu omrim ashrei mi shelo chata mi shechata yeshuvim cholo. But both categories of persons said, fortunate are those who never sinned, and those who sin shall repent, and they shall be forgiven of their sins. Nun Dalet 54. Kevan de'ikla yom tov arishon shel chag ve'ot berev Shabbat. If the first day of Sukkot were to fall out on a Friday, Yom Kippur Imemat, then when would Yom Kippur fall out? Well, bear in mind that the first day of Sukkot is on the 15th day of the month. So Yom Kippur is on the 10th day of the month, 5 days earlier. If Sukkot were to fall on a Friday, Yom Kippur would fall on a Sunday, Chad b'Shabbat. Hilkach dachinan lei. In that scenario, we don't want the calendar to work out that way. We will postpone, we will push off the Rosh Chodesh in order to push off the holidays one day further. Why is it that we do not want to have Yom Kippur fall on a Sunday? Well, one of several factors is that in ancient days, before there was modern refrigeration, it was not easy to preserve a body. A body would decompose. If a person died and was not buried for 48 hours, there would be significant decomposition of the corpse. And so since you cannot bury a body on Shabbat and you cannot bury a body on Yom Kippur, it would behoove us not to have those 2 days back to back, but rather at least separated by 1 day. Nun Hey, 55. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Woe unto the nations, the idolaters, that they lost something. They don't even know what they lost. When the temple stood in Jerusalem, then the altar in the temple would secure atonement for them through the 70 bulls of the Sukkot holiday, which are for the 70 nations of the world. But now that the temple has been destroyed, how do they secure atonement? They don't, or rather, they have no idea how they could secure atonement. So here, the nations of the world are oblivious to the fact that they lost out on something very special that was in their interest. Nun Vav. On the last daf of Masechet Sukkah, the Talmud comes to a conclusion about a very important question halachically that even applies in our time. Hilchata Sukkah ve'achar kach zman. That on the first night of Sukkot, when we say the Kiddush, and we have to say various brachot in the Kiddush, of course we're going to say Borei Pri Hagafen, and we're also going to say Mekadesh Yisrael v'Hazmanim. But after that, we're also going to say Leishev Basukkah, the blessing on the mitzvah of dwelling in the Sukkah, and we're also going to say Shechianu, the Zman, the blessing of time. But which of these two blessings is going to come first? Is it going to be the Shechianu, or is it going to be the Leishev Basukkah? And the Talmud concludes that first we say the Leishev, and afterward we say the Zman. So first Leishev Basukkah, and then afterwards Shechianu. As it turns out in the diaspora, on the second night we flip it around. On the second night in the diaspora, where we're still saying a Shechianu, although in Israel they do not at that point, the Shechianu will come first on the second night, and the Leishev Basukkah will come second. Okay, now we turn our attention to Masechet Beitzah. The Gemara says, "Hashochet tarnagolet." If you slaughter a chicken, umatza ba'beitzim gemurot, and you find inside the chicken eggs which have reached the stage of completion. They were not yet laid, but they already inside the chicken had reached the level of completion. Mutar la'achlan b'yom tov. You're allowed to eat them on Yom Tov, and they're not considered muktzah. So the Gemara asks, why should they not be muktzah? Should we apply the rabbinical decree? Had they been hatched, had they been laid at that day, they would have been forbidden. The Gemara responds, Beitzim gemuros be'imen milsa lo shchichahi. Finding fully formed eggs inside of a slaughtered chicken is a very rare occurrence. Milta de lo shchicha. And the rabbis, when they apply their various rabbinical enactments, only apply them to ordinary scenarios, but not to extraordinary or atypical or unusual scenarios. And since this is milta lo shchicha, it doesn't happen very often, the no rabbinical decree was applied, and the eggs were permitted, they were not considered muktzah. Daf Gimel 3. Echad Beitzah shenolda b'Shabbat, echad Beitzah shenolda b'Yom Tov. Whether an egg was laid on Shabbat or on Yom Tov, ein metaltalin ota. It's going to be considered muksa, and you're not allowed to move it. Aval, however, despite it being muksa, you're going to be allowed to move some other item, a non-muksa item, for the purpose of protecting the muksa item from destruction. Aval kofe aleh kli shelo tishaver. You're allowed to move a kli, a utensil, a vessel, in order that the egg should not be destroyed. So you can take a vessel of any kind, a pot, let's say, and cover up the egg, and lo and behold, the egg has been spared from breakage. Daf Dalet, page 4. Itmar, Shnemim Tavim Shal Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah was observed for 2 days. Even though according to Torah law, it's a one-day holiday on the 1st of Tishrei, in fact, Rosh Hashanah was observed for 2 days for many, many centuries. Certainly in the diaspora, for over 2,000 years, Rosh Hashanah has been observed for 2 days. But even in Eretz Yisrael, in late Second Temple times and in early Rabbinic times and Talmudic times, Rosh Hashanah was kept 2 days, even in Eretz Yisrael, out of the possibility that witnesses came to Har HaBayit, to the Temple Mount, to the court, too late in the day for it to be known widely that a certain day was Rosh Chodesh. So by default, from lack of knowledge, even the Israeli Jews had to keep 2 days. However, from about the 4th century to the 12th century, Israeli Jews kept 1 day, and then the provincial rabbis came to Eretz Yisrael in the 12th century and instructed them to once again keep 2 days. And that is currently the practice in Eretz Yisrael. We keep 2 days of Rosh Hashanah. Well, is the status of Rosh Hashanah different from the 2 days observed in the diaspora on the other holidays, on the Shlosh Regalim? The answer is yes. The Shlosh Regalim, the 2 days are considered Bet Kedushot, 2 different aspects of holiness. And so something was muktzah on day 1 might be permitted on day 2, because by default, one of them was not really the correct day of Yom Tov. However, when it comes to Rosh Hashanah, it's considered Yom Arichta, Chada Kedusha, one long period of holiness lasting for 48 hours. So Gemara says, if an egg was born on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, it remains forbidden on the second day of Rosh Hashanah. Unlike in other Yomim Tovim, where the second day would be permitted, because of the Chad Kedusha, the one long sanctity of Rosh Hashanah, the egg remains prohibited on day 2. Everyone have a good week, and a Shana Tova to one and all.